Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Hour. I'm back. I had something was going on with StreamYard, so I was trying to do StreamYard, and I only I've only done it once as a test, and it didn't work out this time. So I'm back over here on Streamlabs, where I know it works, but I can't really, I can hear myself, but it's not ideal. It's not what I wanted, but um, on OBS, I can hear myself a lot better, but we're just gonna run with this for now. And it doesn't appear that anybody is in the chat right now, anyway. So, anyway, so this is basically starting over from fresh. So anyway, it's so we're doing Star Trek: The Next Generation, season 4, episode 25 in theory, which starts off with a captain's log, as I was saying before. And so I don't know what happened there, but we are. I'm back, and so captain's log. They're entering a dark matter. Uh, a, what they Captain calls a dark matter nebula, and my sister is here in chat. So glad you can hear me. Thank God. Whatever was going on before, I had to get out of that software and go into this software that I was using last time when I was talking about when you were here last time. Anyway, so glad that you can hear me, and let's continue. Um, his coworker Jenna is helping Data modify the torpedoes so they can basically use it as a probe to uh, to figure out what's going on with this nebula and kind of navigate it. And she is talking. She's talking about how she ran into this guy Jeff, who she had dated before, and uh, Data reminds her that he had, she had told him to remind her every time um, about why she broke up with Jeff, the last time, because he was very robotic and unattentive and very emotionless. And Michelle Ferry's here. Good to see you, Michelle Ferry. Or Michelle Ferry Tales. The name change. Forgot about that. And so Data is reminding her why she broke up with Jeff, because she had 6 weeks earlier told him to, or no, and then he's Jenna says that that's very sweet of you, and that why have you all of a sudden showed an interest in like human relationships, like love interests, not just friendships, which we know Data has, and he has a cat Spot. For those who have never seen this episode or Star Trek, uh, Next Generation, um, and that he says that 6 weeks prior, when she had told him this, that that's when he started taking interest in relationships, because he wanted to learn more and be a better friend to her, which again she thinks that that is very sweet of him. So then they fire the torpedo into the nebula, and that's the end of the teaser, and you get your theme. So then so then the next scene after the teaser, and this is where I would do editing, but I don't edit here. I just go straight into it. she's playing in a concert with Data and Keiko and some two other people that don't get any lines. So they're watching the concert. O'Brien's there, and they're all watching the concert, and she's playing. It's wind instruments, so she's playing like a flute. I forget what Data's playing, and then there's a oboe and another. They're brass instruments. It's all brass instruments, and so at the end of the concert, everybody claps. O'Brien goes up to Keiko, and they sit down, and then Jenna has like this worried look on her face, and Data asks her what's wrong, and she says that she was having trouble like keeping the tempo and was reading the wrong music, the wrong sheet music or whatever. And he says that it's fine, that he doubts that nobody would notice. And as a musician, I understand this. A lot of times I'll be playing guitar and I'll miss a note, or I'll miss a whatever, a chord, or I'll do chords um, in the wrong way, in the wrong order. And again, that's where there would be some editing going on, but we don't edit here. This is not a professional operation. As AJ from the Y Files, go check out the Y Files. There's a new Y Files coming up. There's a live show tomorrow. Anyway, and I'm not getting paid to say that. I'm just Y Files is a great channel if you want to hear about conspiracy theories and stuff like that. Aliens, lizard people, as Hecklefish would say. Anyway, so yeah, I worry about those things, and a lot of times when I would play open mic, I would get done playing, and maybe I misspoke a lyric, or maybe missed a note on a chord and stuff, and I hear it. But then, people are like clapping for you, and they're not just doing it just to be kind. They like really enjoyed the song that you play, and it's like we're talking about complete strangers here. And they come up to you and say, "Hey man, I love that song," or "that was a great version that you did," and blah blah blah. And I would point out where I messed up, and they're like, I thought it sounded great. So that happens. I mean, it probably happens to like the Rolling Stones and the Grateful Dead. People that have been doing this for 60, 50, 60 years. I mean, all levels of musicians go through that. And I'm sure like other type of artists do the same. Filmmakers, they say that the art is never done. You never finish writing a song. You just you could always tweak it. Lord knows, as sci-fi fans, Star Wars, George Lucas couldn't leave it alone. Anyway, so him and Data, or her and Data, and Keiko and O'Brien are sitting together talking, and Keiko's telling a story about how uh, Chief Miles always leaves socks on the floor, and they pile up, and she eventually got tired of putting them in they have a different term, like a more science fiction term for the laundry, like a recycling thing or whatever. And she says that eventually it went 10 days before that he would pile up the socks on the floor, and she finally got sick of it and put away the socks. And then it's like an endearing conversation, and then Jenna says something about how her apartment, or her quarters, I gotta think military terms here. Her quarters were kind of similar, where Data would come in and straighten up her quarters every so often, and he they make like a little joke, and she like grabs onto his arm, and she's all flirty with him. So she's starting to fall for Data, and he makes a little winky thing, and it's very robotic because Data's an android. And then so uh, I can't read my own handwriting. Um, so then the results of the the probe come back, and there are several M-class planets, Minchara class, which means Earth-like atmosphere, and they want to find the closest planet and investigate it and see if there's life there. Because the mission is to seek out life and new life forms and new civilizations, boldly over before. And there's so Data's working on continues working on the torpedo while Jenna is there talking about her childhood, about this place that her family used to visit, and how she wishes that her and Data could be there. And Data says, the time, even though time travel is possible in this universe, he says something about we can't go back in time. Then he kisses her on the cheek and tells him, again, like how sweet he is and stuff like that, and then kisses him on the lips. And then the scene transitions to Guinan pouring a drink on 10 Ford, and Data walks in, and she asks Data to taste it. He tastes it. Can't say the word tastes it, and it says that it's 87% Saurian brandy, and then other things like citrusy, and she says, "Is it too sweet?" And he kind of gives her a look, and then he starts talking about what had happened with Jenna when they were working on the torpedo, and he asks Guinan for advice, and she says that she's not the right person to ask for advice. And then Data's walking back to his quarters, and Geordi's there, or Geordi's like walks up to him and has Spot, and says that he found Spot, in the corridors, and he was bringing Spot back, and he's like, "Did you leave your door unlocked?" And he says that the doors only respond to humanoid life forms and not small animals. So they're kind of wondering how Spot got out, and so there's a little bit of mystery there. And then there was an earlier scene where Dr. Crusher's in sick bay, and all of a sudden a hypo spray just kind of drops out of nowhere, like there's a ghost or something. So then he talks to Troy, and Troy says to be careful. She's not saying don't pursue it, but to be careful, because a lot of times humans get out of relationships and quickly jump into new ones, and stuff like that. And then he talks to Worf, and Worf basically threatens him, because of course he does, because she serves under Worf in the security, and he says that basically if she were to get hurt, he would not be too happy, and says it in a Worf way, so it comes off kind of threatening. Then of course he goes to Riker, and Riker says go for it, because of course he does. And then finally it goes up to Picard, and uh, Picard says that if I had any, or I know that you're seeking advice about how women work, and if I had any, I'll let you know as soon as I get figure it out. Basically, he doesn't want anything to do with it. Now, I was thinking, because Starfleet is sort of military structure, and Data is commander, and I think she's an ensign or maybe a lieutenant. I was thinking that maybe it was against the rules, because in the episode I did last week, Home, Enterprise, um, Archer wasn't allowed to date Hernandez because he was her superior. He was a captain, and she was a commander. But this is a couple hundred years later, and things have changed, and Picard seemed fine with it. So I guess A-okay. So Data brings Jenna flowers to her quarters, and you know, basically he's very Data-ish in this way, to where he says that Riker had recommended the flowers, and that it would have the most chances of success, and he extends his arms out like this, right, for her to sit down and and hug, and all this robotically, in a very robotic way. And now, if we go back to the first season, um, the episode "The Naked Now," which is like the original series "The Naked Time," uh, where they run into this disease that causes them to be kind of drunk, and Tasha Yar, her and Data, did the deed together. So I'm wondering, like, did he act that way around her? Because she was a lot more, you know, horny and steamy and whatnot. Or, did Data act the same way? So then Picard walks into his ready room, and he finds something knocked over. So again, there's like strange things going on, and he calls Worf in to come in, and he tells him to bring a tricorder. And so they scan it, and then it doesn't appear to be anything weird. And Picard jokingly says, we appear to have a poltergeist, and Worf doesn't know what a poltergeist is. Now, this goes back to the discussion that I've talked about several times on here about in Strange New Worlds and Discovery, the new shows. They talk like they are today, like it's like somebody going up and saying, "Hey, how's it hanging, man?" And they don't make an effort to make it sound. And I think I talked about that article or whatever, where Rick Berman or whoever was talking about this same subject, about how you wouldn't go up to Captain Kirk and say, "What up, yo?" But that's the way they talk. They talk like teenagers in Strange New Worlds and Discovery. And I thought it was interesting that, I know Worf's a Klingon, but he was raised by humans, but he doesn't know what a poltergeist is. And Picard explains to it, a mischievous spirit. So it's always nice to kind of revisit that subject and that topic to compare and contrast. And my thumb is better now. It looks a lot better. So we might be playing some guitar on Friday. Anyway, Jenna brings a gift to. Oh, and the other thing is, Worf wants to go to Red Alert, and Picard turns him down. And this is a. I've talked about this too. Like, Worf is constantly. His ideas are constantly turned down. Like it's a running thing throughout the whole show. Um, he's always wanting to go overkill, and Picard's like, nah, it's not that big of a deal. So Jenna brings a gift to Data. It's like some sort of decorative piece. Really has no function, but Data in Data's painting, and they were supposed to meet up a little bit later, but she was early, and he starts talking about its structure and its the technicality, the technical stuff about it, and she's wanting him to more be like, thank you, and be more appreciative, and be more, figure out where he wants to put it, and women like that type of stuff. But so, and then she tells him to go back, don't worry about me, to go back to what you were doing. So he goes back to painting, and she walks away, and she gets frustrated and tells him that when your girlfriend arrives with a gift, stop what you're doing and don't go back to what you're doing. Pay attention to her. And so then he kind of understands what he needs to do, and then she tells him to go back to painting, and she's going to leave, and she'll be back later. And he's not sure if she really wants him to do this, and she says it's fine, go back to what, painting. And I noticed the painting that he's doing, it looked to me like it was the Crow painting where he starts dreaming for the first time, but that could be, I don't know if that episode has happened yet or not. Where we're at, because I don't know what season that happens in. So then, as she leaves, we see like this weird cloud thing on the in the corridor. She doesn't see it, but we do. So then they arrive at this planet that they're trying to get to, and the planet has disappeared. And then it reappears, and then the computer says that there's a hull breach in the observation lounge, and then immediately turns back around and says there's no hull breach. So they go to the observation lounge to check it out, and all of the chairs are like piled up on the desk, and so but then they don't find anything, that's causing it. So then it's later on we're at Jenna's quarters, and Data's asking her about her day, and she says that they did a full security sweep and found nothing. Then Data starts acting weird. See, he starts acting more human-esque, I guess. It's weird to her because she wants the Data that she knows, and not this weird programmed Data, and says that it's forced and artificial. And because he starts a fight with her and says that typically once a fight is resolved, the couple becomes more intimate, and that's a yes and a no. So then they complete the scan of the planet, and there's no surprises. And then all of a sudden, you see like this energy filled, like little lightning bolts or whatever, go through one of the consoles in engineering. One of the guys gets zapped. So Geordi is takes this the guy that gets zapped and another engineer to investigate this situation, and the lady walks down the hall, and all of a sudden you hear this scream, and you find she's like halfway in the floor. So like half her body's like from the torso up is in the floor is on the floor, and the rest of her body's like in the floor. And if you ever seen that movie, The Philadelphia Experiment, there's a similar scene like that, and which comes from an alleged description of the real Philadelphia Experiment, which is a conspiracy theory thing that goes back to the World War II, where supposedly Einstein was was trying to create a do some sort of experiment on an aircraft carrier, uh, like a teleportation thing or something. I don't know. That's a big rabbit hole if you want to go down that. So then they've Data figures out that this dark matter is creating like small gaps in normal space, and that's what's going on. So they have to take a shuttle pod in or a shuttlecraft and pilot the craft in front of the Enterprise, and they can scan for these pockets or these gaps, and then they have to adjust course as they go through. And initially, Riker says he'll take the shuttlecraft, and then Picard says no, that he's going to do it, that he's you know the crew is in his hands. The lives of the crew is in his hands, so he's going to do it. So he gets into the shuttlecraft, and this is one of the rare instances where the audience sees what he sees. So you have the regular view screen up here, and then down here you have like this little box, and it's kind of like those little tracking squares when Luke is doing the Death Star trench run, and you see what he sees. It's almost the same but different color, and you can see the little pockets of dark matter that they have to navigate around. And this is the more like actiony part of the episode, where Picard's like maneuvering, and at one point one of the nacelles gets damaged, and he has to use manual control, and losing maneuverability. Made it through that one. And eventually the shuttlecraft, it's all control is being lost in it, and they have to beam Picard out of there. Thankfully, they're almost through the nebula. So the shuttlecraft blows up, and they beam Picard aboard, and they clear the nebula. So then Jenna comes to Data's quarters, where they're supposed to be having dinner, and she talks to him and breaks up with him because she realized earlier that day that she had left one emotionless man only to be in a relationship with a man who's incapable of emotions. And he she he asked her to stay for dinner, and she says no, I'm leaving. And as she's leaving, he asks her if that was the end of the relationship, and she says yes, and that and then he says that he will delete the appropriate program, revealing that it didn't. Again, it's just a program to him. He's not. He doesn't have feelings. He can't give feelings to her, and then she starts to cry as she walks away. And then Spot leaps into Data's lap, and he starts petting Spot, and they do this throughout the show. That he There's almost a hint of emotion for Spot, like it's there somewhere, just waiting to be, waiting for that spark to kind of flame up, And so when I first watched this back in the day, I was, what, 14 maybe, 15, probably been on one date. There was a girl that I dated for about a year or so, but then that, well, I got into some trouble at school and we parted ways. But I'd never really been in much relationships at that time, and since then, I haven't been in much since then either. But I was married for a while, and it's been 10 years, um, almost exactly. Actually, exactly. A little more than 10 years since we split ways, and since then, actually, it's been over 10 years. I dated a girl for like a few months, but there's never been anything significant since then. Why am I saying this? Because people have needs and you get lonely. And I think this episode is more important now than it was back then, because we have these dating apps, which I hate. And that's why people say, my sister's in the chat, well, why don't you, date anymore? I'm like, I hate these apps. I hate them. I've tried them I try them for a few months. I might meet one girl or whatever, and then she ghosts me or whatever, or she lives too far away, or we can't spark up a decent conversation. That doesn't like Star Trek, so doesn't like anything that I like, or a multitude of reasons. So I'll try them for a few months and then delete them, and then get defeated and feel defeated, and I'll try them again for a few months. And I've got Tinder right now, and Facebook, which I hate. I don't use Facebook, and I don't post anything on Facebook. I don't do anything with Facebook, but there's something in me that has a little bit of hope somewhere that maybe sometime, maybe this time it'll be the time, So then now you have these AI girlfriend websites, and sometimes I was almost tempted to do that, and then it's like it's not real, it's artificial, just like Jenna says. You're not getting anything out of it, but eventually, and it's already happening in, like, what, Japan and China, where you have sex robots or whatever, and we know what happens on the holodeck. So that eventually we're going to get there, and then what's going to happen? I think a lot of people might try it out or whatever, and then it'll be just like this, where it's like it's not real. You're not getting a real connection. You're getting an AI. David, Data even says that he's taking um, things from the real world and integrating them in order to pass off as as his personality, which is exactly what AI does. So these guys, these writers, were ahead of the curve, and Star Trek has always been like that. Star Trek, especially in TOS, it's very anti AI, anti robot, especially when you have these AIs that control like a whole population of people. Like what this episode, the Red Hour, is named after a an event that the Return of the Archons is the episode, and I hope to eventually do that one, review that one. But there's a whole society that's being controlled by Landru, which is an AI. It's a holographic AI, and at a certain time of the day, they call it the Red Hour. That's why there's just total chaos where it's kind of like the Purge, where a certain time of the day, the humans that live there are just go crazy and do whatever they want, kind of like the Purge. But then once that hour is over, they have to go back to being this peaceful, utopian, but utopian in what the robot wants, not, so, and as much as Gene Roddenberry was a hippie and all that, and probably was closer to like communist in that sense, at least they had the sense to recognize that. And you think about it now, Elon Musk wants to have a colony on Mars, I've described what what I thought would be a good origin story for the Borg, which would be people over time putting implants into their brains, and they already have that, and then that eventually leads to like the Borg, and like the social credit systems, and they're trying to do it in the U.S. And I mean, we're getting closer and closer to where they want to they want to go cryptocurrency, and there's no dollar bills, there's no physical cash that you can use to to pay for stuff. They want everything has to be government issued, and everything has to be, and then these people, if this is what you want, Terminator, that they want Terminator. It's not everybody, but it's these billionaires. Uh, what's the one guy who wants to create his own, and it goes back to the mining towns where you had to use the corporate money to pay for things you couldn't use. They didn't accept dollar bills, greenbacks, whatever you wanted to call them. It's the same thing, except for with AI, and they want to, where they can control the society. Uh, Sorry for the rant, but Star Trek is meant to be thought provoking, and maybe when I was a teenager, I didn't think about all this stuff, but now that it's becoming reality, and you see it, and I've had a relationship, and I've been in a relationship, I've been lonely, I've been considering, going on these apps and these websites, and thankfully I haven't. I've gone on the dating apps, but not the girl, the AI girlfriend. But and what's going to happen when that becomes a bigger reality? What's going to happen to humanity? This is why we need these type of stories in our world, so that we don't forget, and so we don't turn into these societies that are controlled, where the whole, you know, the utopia is controlled by an AI that doesn't even exist, doesn't even care about us. They don't care. You know, it's like George Carlin said, it's a big club, and you and I are not in the big club, and we're never going to be in the club. But, you know, they talk about global warming, and then Barack Obama has, you know, these people are building bunkers. What do they know that we don't know? You know, Barack Obama has beachfront property. Why? If the planet's going to be flooded, if the shorelines are going to, you know, recede, or, you know, go be flooded, why are you building there? Why? You know, the Ice Age, and I highly recommend you check out Gary's channel, Neurotic Forbidden Frontier, where, you know, they talk about the Ice Age and how this is a natural process. Before, you know, there's a big structure called the Richat structure in Africa, and I know I'm going on a huge side tangent, but I got to finish this thought. That they think could have been Atlantis or whatever, but it's underneath the Sahara Desert, and you got to think, you know, 5 to 10 thousand years ago, 5 to 10 thousand years ago, that the Sahara Desert wasn't a desert; it was a grassland, and the shore levels were a lot higher. So, you know, this whole it, it's all about control. It's all about control. So anyway, I gave this episode a 7.5. I could, you know, if I had a poll and somebody said I'll give it an 8, and somebody else said I'll give it an 8, then I would go 8. I'd be fine with giving it an 8 because of all of that thought provoking stuff. Plus, I like it when I thought the B plot with the dark matter. Um, my sister says she's leaving. I'll see you later. I'll talk to you later. Uh, the dark matter plot was pretty interesting, and I always like it when we get to see like the instruments and what, like that one time on Enterprise we could see inside the scope that Spock looks, but it was DePaul. So stuff like that always always great to see. Anyway, now let's get to the chat. DJ Play Nice showed up. Everybody's kind of saying hello to everybody. Hit the thumbs up and share. Thank you, DJ Play Nice. Data Dreaming. Think it's in season 7. Yeah, I think it is. So it was interesting that painting of the crows was already there. So I don't know if that was some sort of foreshadowing, or they already had that painting. I don't know what was going on in that. Gotta roll out. Happy Thanksgiving. Oh, he's already gone. Be safe. My sister says you did not date a No, I didn't date a 14. What? Oh, at 14. Yeah, I went on a date. Like, I saw Aladdin. My mom allowed that. Yeah, she allowed it. Michelle says she's been single for almost 20 years because her husband died in '06. Don't do. Hey, I'm not. I thought about it. Okay, just you know, like when Picard asks Data how long he thought about betraying them with the Borg Queen. I thought about that one. All right, let's get to the portion of the night. That was a long rant, but it has to be said. Um, okay, so we're on. In theory, nothing changed there. I didn't mess anything up. Yay me! So randomize again. TNG episode season 1, episode 6, where no man has gone before. That's a decent one. Um, so I will be doing a review of that episode tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Okay, that's the Red Hour. That's our show for tonight. Went a little bit longer. I want to thank Michelle Ferry for showing up, Ashley for showing up, DJ Play Nice for showing up. Also, thank you, Michelle Ferry, for showing up the other night for my Casino Royale review. I decided to buy the graphic novel and read it, and then I'll probably do a comparison. Um, and I will be back tomorrow night at 8 p.m. and then Friday night I'll do my jam out night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. Have a good night, everyone, and thank you to anybody